Marcus Hartley walked nervously through the bustling halls of the Intergalactic Trade Station. It was his first assignment as a Federation diplomat. The task at hand was no small feat. The Zorans, an ancient and mysterious alien race, had remained isolated from the galactic community for centuries. Now, the Federation had finally made contact, and Marcus was the one chosen to convince them to join the Intergalactic Alliance. The station was alive with alien species from across the galaxy. There were beings with shimmering scales, tall creatures with multiple arms, and humans like Marcus, trying to navigate through the throng. His mission was critical, but the noise and chaos of the station made him feel small. The Zorians had always kept to themselves, their silence as powerful as their technological advancements. If Marcus was going to succeed, he needed to find a way to break through their walls, to show them that joining the Federation was in their best interest. Marcus adjusted his collar and tried to focus. His meeting with the Zoran Council would take place in an hour. He needed to be prepared. As he wandered through the market section of the station, searching for a quiet place to gather his thoughts, his eyes wandered to a group of Zoran merchants. They were tall, their skin a shade of silvery blue that shimmered like the night sky. Their eyes were large and black, with a depth that made Marcus feel like they could see through him. He had heard rumors about the Zoran race, how they had an aura of detachment, how they never showed emotion. Some said they were a proud people, and others said they were just distant and cold. Marcus wasn't sure what to believe. All he knew was that he had to make a good impression. Suddenly, he wasn't paying attention to where he was walking, and before he could react, he bumped into someone. Strong arms steadied him before he could stumble backward. Looking up, Marcus found himself face to face with a Zoran woman. She was stunning. Her skin, smooth and silver, seemed to glow under the bright lights of the station. Her eyes, dark and mesmerizing, locked onto his with an intensity that made him pause. "I'm sorry," Marcus stammered, straightening himself. He hadn't expected to meet a Zoran like her, graceful, yet strong. Wasn't looking where I was going. The Zoran woman didn't speak at first. She simply studied him for a moment, her gaze unblinking. Marcus felt his heart race under the weight of her stare. The silence between them was thick, but there was something in her eyes, something curious. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and melodic. "You are a human." Marcus blinked, still stunned by the encounter. "Yes," he said, feeling slightly awkward. "I'm Marcus Hartley. I'm here on a diplomatic mission." She tilted her head slightly. "A diplomat? How curious." Before he could respond, he realized his words had betrayed him. The woman was standing so close, her presence so overwhelming, that his nerves got the best of him. Without thinking, he said, "You look lovely." The moment the words left his mouth, he instantly regret. Marcus wasn't sure what to make of the conversation. Everything about this woman, her beauty, her calm demeanor, and the way she carried herself was unlike anything he had ever encountered. And now, a request to hear the same words again made his heart race in a way he hadn't anticipated. Before he could say anything further, the woman turned, her long silver hair flowing behind her like a shimmering curtain. "You will find me again," she said over her shoulder, as if the words were not a question, but a certainty. "And when you do, I will expect to hear those words again." Marcus stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He hadn't expected a simple encounter like this to leave such an impact on him. As he watched her walk away, the quiet hum of the station filled his ears. Marcus spent the next few days trying to focus on his mission. But no matter how hard he tried, his mind kept drifting back to the Zoran woman he had bumped into. He couldn't stop thinking about her silver skin, the way her eyes had locked onto his, and the unexpected way she had blushed. It was almost as if something had shifted between them in that brief encounter. His meetings with the Zoran Council were scheduled to begin soon, and he had little time to focus on anything else. The stakes were high. If he failed to convince them to join the Federation, the human race might face years of isolation. Yet, no matter how important his diplomatic efforts were, his thoughts always circled back to Hertha woman who had left an impression on him without even trying. He had tried to forget her, but it was impossible. There was something about the way she had looked at him, the way her voice had been so calm yet filled with a quiet intensity. He had never met anyone like her, and it wasn't just because she was a Zoran. There was something deeper, something magnetic about her presence that drew him in. As the day of the council meeting approached, Marcus found himself growing more nervous, not just because of the importance of the talks, but because he had a feeling that he would see her again. His thoughts were confirmed when he entered the council chamber and noticed a familiar face, sitting among the members of the Zoran council. It was her, the Zoran woman. It's the one who had blushed when he called her lovely. She was seated with the council members, her silver skin gleaming under the harsh light of the room. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, but there was a glint in her eyes that seemed to focus solely on him. Marcus couldn't help but feel a flutter of anxiety in his chest as he made his way to his designated seat across from the council. The room was filled with tension, the air thick with the weight of the decision that would soon be made. The Zorans were powerful, but they had kept their distance from the Federation for years. Their people were proud, fiercely independent, and had little interest in joining a larger galactic community. Marcus had been trained for moments like this, moments of pressure. But nothing could prepare him for the strange feeling in his chest as he noticed the Zoran woman's gaze never leaving him. He tried to focus on his presentation, outlining the benefits of joining the Federation. The humans offered trade agreements, shared technology, and the promise of protection from hostile forces. But as he spoke, Marcus couldn't help but notice her. She was listening, her eyes locked on him, and he could feel a strange connection building between them. Even though they hadn't spoken since that brief encounter in the market, his voice faltered slightly, and for a moment he thought he saw the corners of her mouth twitch, almost as if she were holding back a smile. He shook his head, trying to push the thought out of his mind. This was a diplomatic mission, not a personal one. He couldn't let her distract him, no matter how captivating she was. The council's questions were sharp and direct, but he answered each one with precision. The room seemed to settle into a rhythm, and for a brief moment, he forgot about the woman across the table. But then, just as he was finishing a particularly difficult question, he caught her gaze again. This time, she didn't look away. Eyes held a certain challenge, as if she were daring him to say something more, something beyond the formalities of diplomacy. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but stopped himself. He wasn't sure what to say, and for a brief moment, the weight of the silence between them felt like it could swallow him whole. He glanced down at his notes, but they suddenly seemed meaningless. He knew what he had to do, but there was something more pressing, something he couldn't ignore. Without thinking, the words slipped from his lips. "You look lovely today," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent, and Marcus immediately regretted the words. He could feel the eyes of the council members on him, their gazes sharp and critical. The Zoran woman, however, remained calm. Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles, and once again, he noticed the faintest blush on her cheeks. The sight of her blushing, so subtle, yet so real, struck him harder than he had expected. How could a Zoran, a race so proud and composed, show such a human reaction? It was a mystery that only deepened the intrigue he felt for her. She tilted her head, her eyes never leaving his. "Say it again, human," she said, her voice soft but firm. Marcus hesitated, his heart racing. He wasn't sure why he had said it, or why he felt this overwhelming urge to say it again. But he knew, in that moment, that something had shifted. Between them, his voice shook slightly as he repeated, "You look lovely." The Zoran woman's smile widened, and Marcus felt a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. Her response was barely audible, but he could hear the warmth in her voice. "Thank you, human." The council, still silent, exchanged confused glances, but Marcus was no longer paying attention to them. All his focus was on the Zoran woman, on her smile, on the way she had reacted to his words. It was as if they had shared a secret, one that no one else in the room would ever understand. As the meeting continued, Marcus found himself distracted. The words he had spoken, the connection he had felt, it was all too much to ignore. He didn't know what this meant, or if it even meant anything at all. but he couldn't deny the feeling that something was beginning to grow between him and the Zoran woman. Something unexpected, something powerful. Over the next few days, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that hung over him. The diplomatic talks with the Zoran Council were progressing, but his thoughts often strayed back to the mysterious Zoran woman, Lyra. Their brief interactions had left a mark on him. He couldn't deny that there was something about her that intrigued him. Something beyond her stunning beauty and her surprising reactions. Despite his attempts to focus on the mission, every moment he spent on the station felt overshadowed by his encounters with Lyra, the way she looked at him with those intense dark eyes, the way her presence seemed to fill any room she was in. It was impossible to ignore. What started as a diplomatic mission had begun to feel like something far more personal. Marcus wasn't sure how to handle it. One afternoon, after a long meeting with the council, Marcus found himself walking down the station's long hallways, trying to clear his mind. He needed space to think, but the thought of returning to his quarters seemed impossible. He had no idea where he was going when he rounded a corner and nearly collided with Lyra. She stood there, her silver skin glowing under the station's artificial lights, her long hair flowing down her back like a dark stream. She looked up at him, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. It was as if the world around them had fallen away, leaving just the two of them standing there in the quiet corridor. "Human," she finally spoke, her voice soft but strong.
"See that you
are lost in thought. I find that I too have been thinking about our conversations." Her words were direct, but there was an underlying warmth in her tone that made Marcus's heart race. He had grown used to her calm, composed demeanor, but today something felt different. She was softer, more approachable. Marcus began. "Unsure of what to say, I've been thinking about you too." He immediately regretted the words, but they were already out in the open. He had never been this honest with anyone before, and the sudden vulnerability caught him off guard. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It's just that you've been on my mind a lot." Lyra's gaze softened. She took a small step closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "It is strange, isn't it?" she asked, almost as if to herself. "That two beings from such different worlds could find something in each other. You a human, with your short lifespan and fragile body. Me, a Zoran, with our long life and strength." She paused, as if weighing her next words carefully. Yet, here we are, standing together. Marcus felt a sense of connection that he couldn't explain. It was more than attraction. It was something deeper. Something that made him want to understand her, not just as an alien race, but as an individual. "I've always believed that even the most different beings can find common ground. Maybe it's not about our differences, but about what we share," Marcus said, his voice steady. Even though his heart was pounding in his chest, Lyra considered this for a moment before speaking again. "You are different from what I expected, human. Most of your kind are driven by ambition, by power, yet you are different." Her voice softened as she spoke, and Marcus felt a rush of warmth at her words. "You see us for who we are, not just as a means to an end." Lyra was quiet for a moment, her eyes reflecting the light from the station's windows. Then she spoke again, her voice low. "Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps there is more to this galaxy than power. Perhaps we can all find something we've been searching for." Marcus couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something bigger, something important. As they sat there, in that small, quiet room, it was clear that their bond had deepened beyond words. What started as a simple diplomatic mission had evolved into something far more personal, a connection that neither of them had expected but both of them needed. As the days passed, Marcus and Lyra continued to meet in secret, sharing their thoughts and dreams. And in those moments, it was clear that no matter the outcome of the Federation talks, something between them had already begun to grow, something that would shape their futures in ways neither of them could predict. The days on the station grew more intense as the Zoran Council's decision approached. Marcus found himself torn between his duties and his growing feelings for Lyra. The diplomatic talks were crucial, and he knew he needed to focus on the larger picture, the future of the galaxy. Yet, as each day passed, the bond he shared with Lyra became harder to ignore. They continued to meet in secret, their conversations deepening with each passing moment. Marcus had never felt such a connection with anyone before. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the way she listened, the way she saw the world in a way that no one else did. In her presence, he felt like he could truly be himself, without the weight of his role as a diplomat hanging over him. But Marcus also knew the reality of the situation. The Federation needed the Zorans. Their advanced technology and knowledge could be the key to maintaining peace in the galaxy. Without them, the Federation's future could be uncertain. Yet, despite the importance of his mission, Marcus found himself distracted by thoughts of Lyra. What would happen if they were successful in bringing the Zorans into the Federation? Would he lose the connection he had with her? Would their bond survive the pressures of their respective worlds? As the day of the Council's final vote grew closer, Marcus knew he had to focus. There was no time for distractions. Yet, even as he tried to prepare his speech, he couldn't help but think of Lyra's soft smile, the way her eyes seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken words. It was as if they had a secret no one else could understand. One evening, as the station's artificial stars flickered in the distance, Marcus walked through the corridors, his mind heavy with the weight of the decision ahead. He had just finished a meeting with the Federation representatives, and his mind was spinning with the details. The council was divided, and time was running out. He needed to find a way to unite them, to show them that joining the Federation was the right choice for the Zur. And as he passed by a quiet hallway, he noticed a figure standing near the observation window. It was Lyra. She was looking out into the endless expanse of space, her posture straight, but there was something in her expression that made Marcus stop in his tracks. He could sense a sadness in her eyes, something deeper than the calm exterior. "She always wore Lyra," he called softly, his voice uncertain. She turned toward him, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The silence between them was comfortable, but it also held an unspoken tension, as if they both knew that the moment of decision had arrived. "Marcus," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "I've been thinking a lot about the Federation and what it means for us. I know why you were here, what you need to do. But what about us? What happens when the decision is made?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. He had been avoiding this conversation, but now it seemed inevitable. "I don't know," he admitted. I don't know what will happen when the council votes. But I do know this. Whatever happens, I believe in what we are trying to do. I believe the Federation can bring peace, not just to humans, but to everyone." Lyra nodded slowly, her silver skin catching the faint light of the station's artificial stars. "I've always believed in the strength of my people. But I've also seen the damage that isolation can cause. Perhaps it's time for us to open ourselves to something more." She paused, looking out at the stars once more. "But what if we lose everything in the process?" Marcus walked closer to her, feeling the weight of her words. He could see the conflict in her eyes. The Zorans had always been a proud, independent people, and the idea of joining the Federation was not one they took lightly. It was a huge decision, one that could change the course of their future. "I don't have all the answers," Marcus said quietly, standing beside her now. "But I believe that together we can build something better. We can offer the galaxy something it's never had before. Unity." He turned to face her, his heart pounding in his chest. "And I want to help you, Lyra. I want to help you and your people find that unity, no matter what it takes." For a moment, Lyra didn't respond. She simply stood there, gazing out into the vastness of space. Marcus could see the internal struggle in her, the weight of her people's past, and the uncertainty of the future. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we can truly find peace, Marcus? Or are we just fooling ourselves, thinking that we can change what's already been written?" Marcus placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his touch soft but steady. "I think that's something we all have to fight for, Lyra. Peace isn't something that just happens. It's something we have to work toward together. And if you're willing to take that step, I'll be right there beside you." Lyra turned to face him, her eyes searching his face as if looking for the truth in his words. For a long moment, she said nothing. But then, slowly, she nodded. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly, "but I'm willing to try, Marcus. For us, for the future, I mean. In that moment, Marcus felt a sense of relief wash over him. He didn't know what would happen after the vote, or what the future would hold for him and Lyra. But he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The next day, the Zoran Council gathered to make their decision. The room was tense, filled with anticipation. Marcus stood at the front, his heart racing as he prepared to speak. But as he looked out over the council, his thoughts were not on the speech he had rehearsed. They were on Lyra, sitting quietly among the council members, her eyes meeting his in a silent promise. No matter what happened, Marcus knew that he had done his best. And no matter what the outcome, he and Lyra would face whatever came next. The day of the Zoran Council's final decision was finally here. The atmosphere in the chamber was thick with tension, the silence pressing down on everyone present. Marcus sat at the front of the room, his thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty. The weight of the moment hung heavy on his shoulders. He had spent days preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, all his carefully crafted words seemed meaningless. Lyra sat across from him, her silver skin glowing faintly under the bright lights of the room. Her calm exterior hid the storm he knew must be raging inside her. The Zoran Council was not an easy group to convince, and Marcus could sense that. Lyra, despite her usual stoic demeanor, was struggling with the decision as much as he was. The debate began as soon as the council members took their seats. The discussions were sharp and passionate, each member voicing their opinions about whether or not to join the Federation. The argued debate went on for hours. Each council member took turns speaking, some in favor of joining the Federation, others firmly opposed. But Marcus could see that the decision was not going to be made by logic alone. It was about trust in him, in the Federation, and in the future they were trying to build together. Finally, the council turned to Lyra. She had remained silent throughout the entire discussion, but now the room fell quiet as all eyes turned to her. She was the highest-ranking member of the Zoran Council, and her opinion would carry immense weight. Lyra's eyes briefly met Marcus's, and in that moment, he felt the connection between them more strongly than ever. He had never realized how much he had come to rely on her presence. Her calmness, her strength had been a constant throughout this entire process. But now, her face was filled with uncertainty. Slowly, she stood up, her silver hair cascading down her back like a curtain of light. The room held its breath. As she took a step forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "I have listened to all the arguments," she began, her tone steady. But there was an underlying emotion that caught Marcus off guard. "I have heard the concerns of my people. I have heard the promises of the Federation. But what I must ask myself is not what is best for the Zorans in terms of power or resources. What I must ask myself is whether or not we can trust that this path will lead us to a better future." The council waited in silence as Lyra paused, gathering her thoughts. Marcus's heart raced. He knew this was it, the moment when everything would change. He didn't know what she would say, but he knew it would shape their fate. "I have seen what the Federation has to offer," Lyra continued, her eyes now locked on Marcus. "I have seen how it can bring peace, how it can bring unity, but I have also seen the fear in my people's eyes. The fear of losing who we are, the fear of being swallowed up by something larger than us." Her gaze softened, and she turned to the rest of the council. "But I have also seen something else. I have seen the strength in this human," she said, nodding toward Marcus. "I have seen his determination to bring us together, not for power, but for the sake of peace. I have seen his heart, and I believe in it." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat as Lyra spoke. He had known that her words would carry weight, but he hadn't expected this. She was speaking not just as a leader, but as someone who had come to trust him. The realization hit him like a wave. "Perhaps it is time for the Zorans to take a chance," Lyra said, her voice steady. "Perhaps it is time for us to step out of the shadows and into the light of the galaxy." The room was still as Lyra finished speaking. No one moved. Marcus could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what the council would decide, but Lyra's words had been a turning point. She had given them the courage to look beyond their fears, and then, one by one, the council members began to speak. The atmosphere shifted. There was no longer the sharp division between those who supported the Federation and those who opposed. Instead, the conversation turned toward what could be gained from joining, how they could maintain their identity while still being part of something greater. Marcus was stunned. He had never imagined the council would come around so quickly, but Lyra's words had opened their eyes. The Zorians were not just considering a political alliance. They were considering a new way forward for their people. As the debate came to a close, the council turned to Marcus, and he could see that the vote was coming. His heart was in his throat as he waited for the decision. But before the vote was cast, Lyra stood up once more, her eyes finding Marcus's. "I know this decision will not be easy," she said, her voice softer now, "but I believe in it." Marcus Hartley. With that, she sat back down, and the council began to vote. Marcus didn't know what the outcome would be, but in that moment, he realized something, no matter what happened. The bond between him and Lyra had already changed everything. They had fought together for something bigger than themselves, and that was worth more than any political decision. The chamber fell into silence as the final votes were cast. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He stood there waiting, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on him like 1,000 unseen hands. All the months of preparation, the countless meetings, the long talks with Lyra, everything had led to this. He knew that the future of both the Federation and the Zorians depended on this decision. Lyra sat across from him, her silver eyes watching the council members with a calm intensity. Despite her composed exterior, Marcus could see the tension in her posture. She had played a pivotal role in bringing the council to this point, and now she had to wait, just like him. The room seemed to stretch on forever as the council members whispered among themselves, discussing the vote. Marcus couldn't make out their words, but he didn't need to. It was clear from their expressions that they were weighing something much deeper than just politics. And this decision was about more than alliances or trade agreements. It was about trust. Trust in the Federation, and perhaps even more so. Trust in Marcus and the bond he had formed with Lyra. Finally, the council leader, an older Zoran male, with wrinkles etched deeply into his silver skin, stood. The room quieted immediately, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat.
"All the leaders."
Deep voice rang out across the chamber. "The votes have been cast," he said, his tone neutral, but there was a subtle weight to his words. "The decision to join the Federation is one that will change the course of our people's future. We have heard your arguments, and we have considered them carefully." Marcus glanced at Lyra. She was sitting still, her expression unreadable, but her hands were tightly clasped in her lap. He could tell she was just as nervous as he was. She had put herself on the line for this, her people's future, their place in the galaxy. This wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about a new beginning. For both the Zorans and the humans, the council leader continued, and after much discussion, we have reached a decision. The silence in the room was suffocating. Marcus could barely hear his own thoughts over the pounding of his heart. What if they rejected it? What if everything he had fought for, everything he had hoped for, crumbled before his eyes? But then, the leader spoke again. "It is the will of this council," he said, his voice firm, "that the Zoran people will join the Federation." The words hit Marcus like a tidal wave. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. His mind spun, unable to fully process the significance of what had just happened. The Zorans, his mission, his future with Lyra, was all real. They had done it, eh? Cheer went up in the chamber, but Marcus barely heard it. His eyes were locked on Lyra. She had stood up, her face soft with emotion. Her silver eyes shone as she gazed at him, and for a moment it felt like the entire room had disappeared. Lyra took a few slow steps toward Marcus, her posture elegant, yet there was a sense of vulnerability in the way she moved. The moment she reached him, Marcus felt an overwhelming wave of relief and happiness flood over him. She stopped in front of him, her eyes searching his face for a long moment. Then, without a word, she placed her hand on his chest, just over his heart. Touch was soft, but it sent a shock of warmth through. "Oh, him, thank you," Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. "Thought to thank you for believing in us, for believing in me." Marcus smiled, his heart full. "You believed in me first," he replied softly. "Lyra made this possible, Lyra." She looked down for a moment, her fingers still resting lightly on his chest. When she looked back up, there was something different in her eyes, something deeper. "We've made history today," she said, her voice steady. "The Zoran people have taken a step forward together." Marcus nodded. The weight of their decision was still sinking in, but in that moment, he knew that they had done something extraordinary. The Federation had just gained one of the most powerful, enigmatic races in the galaxy, and they had done it not through force or manipulation, but through trust and understanding. Lyra took a small step back, but her gaze didn't leave him. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "There will be challenges ahead, but we will face them together." Marcus's heart swelled with pride. He had come here to represent the Federation, but now, in this moment, he was more than just a diplomat. He was a part of something bigger than himself. Part of something that could change the galaxy. "We will face them together," he agreed, his voice steady with conviction. The council members had gathered around them now, congratulating Marcus and Lyra. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from tension to celebration. The future was uncertain, but the possibilities were endless. As the celebrations continued around them, Marcus and Lyra stepped aside for a moment, finding a quiet corner of the chamber. They stood there, side by side, looking out at the stars through the observation window. "It's not over yet," Marcus said, his voice thoughtful. "We still have a lot of work to do." Lyra nodded, her expression serious, but there was a softness in her eyes. "I know, but now we have a chance, a real chance to build something better, for both of us." Marcus reached out, his hand finding hers. "Together," he repeated, feeling the weight of the word. Together, it was a promise that they would face whatever came next, side by side. The challenges, the obstacles, they would overcome them together. And no matter what the future held, Marcus knew that this moment, this decision, had changed everything. For the Zorans, and for him and Lyra, the future was wide open, and they were ready to step into it together. The decision had been made, but the work was far from over. Marcus stood in the middle of the bustling intergalactic trade station, staring out at the vastness of space. The Zorans had joined the Federation, but now came the task of truly uniting their people. With the rest of the galaxy, he could feel the weight of his role as a human representative, and yet there was something more personal pulling at him now. It wasn't just about the Federation anymore. It was about Lyra and what lay ahead for them both. He had known from the start that this mission would be challenging, but he hadn't expected this connection, this bond that had grown between him and Lyra. They had started as diplomat and leader, working toward a common goal, but somewhere along the way, they had become something more. It wasn't just the success of the mission that had changed his life. It was the unexpected relationship that had blossomed between them, one that Marcus wasn't sure how to define. As he walked through the station, he spotted Lyra across the room. She was standing near the council chambers, speaking with a few other Zoran representatives. The sight of her always made his heart skip a beat. Her silver skin seemed to glow under the lights of the station, and her calm, commanding presence still captivated him. But now, there was something different about her. There was a softness in her eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Lyra excused herself from the conversation and walked toward him. As she drew closer, Marcus could see the smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice like music in the quiet of the station. "I wanted to speak with you." He felt a rush of emotions as he looked at her. Everything they had been through, everything they had faced together, had led to this moment. He nodded, a small smile of his own appearing. "Of course, Lyra. What's on your mind?" She glanced around them, making sure they were not being overheard, and then took a deep breath. "There are many things to consider now that we've joined the Federation," We will need to figure out how to integrate our people, our cultures. It's a big task. I know, Marcus replied, his voice filled with determination. But I believe we can do it. The Federation is built on the idea that different worlds can come together. And now, with the Zorans on board, we have an even stronger foundation. Lyra nodded, but there was something in her eyes that told him she wasn't just thinking about the political work ahead. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said quietly. What happens now, Marcus? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had known this moment would come. They had both known that their bond couldn't be ignored forever. The mission was over, but the future was uncertain. What would happen to their relationship when the politics faded away? What would they be, outside of their roles as representatives? Lyra's gaze softened as she took a step closer to him. I'm not sure what the future holds, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I know that I don't want to face it without you. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. I feel the same way, he admitted. I don't know what's ahead for us, but I do know one thing. I want to see it through with you. There was a quiet moment between them, a silent understanding that passed through their gaze. They didn't need to say more. Words couldn't capture the depth of what they shared. The challenges that lay ahead for the Federation, for the Zorans, for their relationship, they were all unknown. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Marcus felt a sense of peace. Whatever happened next, he wasn't alone. The sound of footsteps brought them back to the present. Several Zoran representatives were approaching, ready to continue the work of integrating their people into the Federation. But Marcus and Lyra shared one last look before they stepped away from the moment they had shared, returning to their roles. The work was just beginning, but they both knew that they would face it together. As the days passed, the station became a hive of activity. Representatives from various planets and species arrived to discuss trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and military alliances. The Zorans had already begun to integrate into the Federation's systems, and Marcus found himself in the middle of countless meetings, negotiations, and discussions. It was a busy, chaotic time, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. The dream of a united galaxy was becoming a reality. Lyra, too, worked tirelessly with her people, guiding them through the challenges of this new phase of their existence. She was a natural leader, strong yet compassionate, and Marcus saw the respect and admiration her people had for her. But she was also learning to trust in the Federation's ideals, and she found herself growing more comfortable with the idea of working alongside humans. She wasn't just a leader now, she was an ambassador for change. One evening after another long day of work, Marcus and Lyra found themselves walking through the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The soft hum of the station was the only sound, and the quietness of the moment felt like a breath of fresh air. I think we've made it, Marcus said, his voice thoughtful. We've done something no one thought possible. The Federation is stronger now, and the Zorans are part of it, Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing with pride. We've done it together, she replied. And we'll keep doing it together. They stood there, side by side, looking out at the vastness of space. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had each other, and that in itself was a victory. As they looked out at the stars, Marcus felt a sense of hope rising within him. No matter what came next, he knew that with Lyra by his side, they could face anything. The galaxy was changing, and they were changing with it. Wow! They would navigate the challenges ahead, side by side, united in their vision for a better future.